A black woman named Danielle Carter, a successful attorney, moves into a wealthy, predominantly white suburban neighborhood. Almost immediately, she's targeted by the HOA president, Karen Whitmore, who tries to intimidate her with bogus fines and violations. What Karen doesn't know is that Danielle is a civil rights lawyer, and she's not about to back down quietly. Danielle Carter rolled down her car window and took a long, satisfied breath. The air smelled like pine, money, and freshly cut grass. Her moving truck rumbled behind her, boxers stacked like Jenga towers, ready to fill the 5-bedroom, 2-story, modern colonial she just bought. After years of courtroom battles, endless nights, and one very famous class action victory, this moment was supposed to feel like peace. But it didn't. She smiled anyway. The kind of smile that says, I earned this. Because she had. The neighborhood looked like a Pinterest board come to life. Perfect white fences. Driveways so clean they sparkled. Front yards trimmed like golf courses. But as she slowly drove through the main gate, yes, it had a literal gate, complete with a bored security guard who didn't even look up. She noticed something odd. People watched, not stared, watched, from behind curtains, through tinted SUV windows. A couple of joggers slowed down, as if their shoelaces suddenly needed attention. Danielle waved, got nothing back but stiff shoulders and narrowed eyes. Maybe they're just not morning people, she thought, brushing it off. Maybe everyone here was too rich to wave. By the time the movers started unloading her furniture, the sun was high and the silence was heavy. Not a single neighbor came by to say hello, not with cookies, not with a casserole, not even with a fake smile. At 2:45 p.m., a middle-aged woman in a pastel windbreaker walked by slowly, eyeing Danielle's doormat like it had personally offended her. The mat said, "Black girl magic lives here." Danielle caught the look. She raised one eyebrow and sipped her iced coffee. At 8:03 the next morning, something slid through her mail slot. No envelope, no return address, just a single piece of paper, printed in Arial font with phrases like standards of the community, proper appearance, and respect for aesthetic cohesion. Danielle read it twice. The tone was sugary, but every sentence had barbs. We welcome all new residents to Oak Meadow Bluffs. Please note that exterior decor, such as colorful doormats, visible moving boxes, and unapproved curtains, may violate community guidelines. We appreciate your cooperation as we maintain our beautiful neighborhood. No signature, no name, just a big fat welcome laced with a warning. Danielle chuckled. Wow, not even 24 hours. By Thursday, the first official fine arrived. Folded into a standard white HOA envelope, it came with a bright yellow sticker slapped right on her front door. Violation, improper trash bin placement. According to the note, her bin had been visible from the street for longer than the allowed time frame. The fine, $50. The catch, Danielle hadn't even put the bin out. She'd been too busy trying to figure out which box her coffee maker was in. She called the HOA number listed at the bottom of the letter. It rang 7 times before going to voicemail. She left a polite but firm message, introducing herself and asking for clarification. Then she laughed and shook her head. "Okay, so we're doing that," she said aloud to no one. By Sunday, she had racked up another notice. This one claimed her driveway had excess surface dust from the moving truck. Another fine, another envelope. Now, Danielle wasn't new to subtle aggression. She'd been a black woman in law school. She'd gone up against corporate lawyers who didn't know her name until she wiped the floor with them. But this was almost cartoonish. Like Karen had left the real world and built her dream neighborhood in Stepford, where only the approved types of families, faces, and flower beds were welcome. And while Danielle could take a joke, she didn't like being played. She started keeping every letter, every photo, every timestamp, because while Karen, whoever she was, thought she was sending warnings, Danielle was already building a case file. After all, there were rules, and then there were rights. And Danielle knew the difference. The morning Danielle Carter pulled into her new driveway, the sun was shining like it had been waiting all week for her arrival. Everything about Oak Meadow Bluffs looked like it had been edited with a real estate filter: crisp lawns, shiny mailboxes, and houses that looked too proud of their crown molding. It was the kind of neighborhood that came with community guidelines, printed on thick paper, and smiling secrets hidden behind manicured hedges. Danielle's house was perfect. 5 bedrooms, a wraparound porch, and a front door painted the exact shade of navy that made Pinterest moms swoon. It was her reward after years of clawing through law school, chewing through 60-hour weeks, and landing a monster win on a class action case that made her name in the civil rights world. This house, it wasn't just bricks and drywall. It was justice with central air. But the neighbors, well, they didn't exactly roll out the welcome mat. A tall man watering his lawn 2 houses down gave her a once-over, then focused way too hard on a single patch of grass. A blonde woman pushing a baby stroller walked by without making eye contact. No smiles, no "hey there, welcome to the neighborhood." Just a lot of tight faces and sideways glances, like Danielle had tracked in something sticky from the city. She tried not to read too much into it. Moving was chaotic enough. Maybe everyone was just busy, or shy, or allergic to new people. Maybe she was being paranoid. After all, she hadn't even unpacked yet. Give it a week, she told herself. People need time. That theory died the next morning. At 7:52 a.m., something slid through her mail slot. No envelope, no return address. Just one sheet of paper, printed in a stiff font and drenched in passive aggression. Dear homeowner, it began never a good start. Welcome to Oak Meadow Bluffs. Please be mindful of our community's aesthetic standards. We kindly ask that trash bins not be left visible. Window treatments remain neutral in color, and outdoor decor maintain neighborhood harmony. Thank you for helping us preserve the beauty of our community. Danielle squinted at the paper. No signature, no contact number. Just a quiet little threat, dressed up as a welcome note. She looked out the window. Her trash bin was still tucked behind the fence, right where the movers had left it. And those window treatments. Bed sheets. Okay, because her real curtains were still in a box, labeled master bedroom maybe. She laughed. Not a cute laugh. More like a "you really tried it" laugh. Okay? Game on. 3 days later, the first official fine arrived. It was folded inside a white envelope with the HOA logo, a crest that looked like a Harvard dropout tried to rebrand clip art. The violation: trash bin placement. Apparently, her bin had been visible for more than the allowed 2 hours post-pickup. Fine, $50. Danielle stared at the letter like it might burst into flames. She hadn't even taken the trash out. She'd been too busy searching for her French press and arguing with her Wi-Fi router. She called the HOA number listed at the bottom. It rang 7 times before a voicemail clicked on. She left a calm, polite message, introducing herself and asking for clarification. Then she hung up and made a mental note to start a folder. Because if this was how things were starting, it was only going downhill from here, and she was right. By the end of her first week, she'd racked up 2 more infractions. One for visible moving boxes stacked in her garage, and another for non-conforming porch decor. The porch decor in question: a small, tasteful sign that read "Black Girl Magic Lives Here." Subtle. This neighborhood was not. The final straw came Saturday morning. Danielle had just settled on her porch with a coffee and a podcast, when a woman in salmon-colored capris and a tight blonde ponytail strolled up the driveway like she owned it. She had the kind of smile that looked more like a threat than a greeting, and clutched a clipboard like it was holy scripture. "Hello there. I'm Karen Whitmore," she chirped, president of the HOA. "Just doing my rounds." Danielle set down her coffee and stood. "Nice to meet you, Danielle Carter." Karen's eyes did a quick scan: hair, nails, skin. Her smile didn't budge, but her voice got just a shade colder. Well, welcome. Just wanted to flag a few concerns so we can get you settled smoothly. We have a certain look we like to maintain around here. Oh, Danielle raised an eyebrow. Yes, like that ... porch sign. It's very colorful. You mean the one that says Black Girl Magic? Yeah, it tends to be. Karen blinked. Right. And also, just so you know, our guidelines prefer neutral tones for window coverings. Your bedsheets are quite bold. Danielle smiled, slow and practiced. I'll be sure to update my linen collection to meet HOA standards once my actual curtains show up. But thanks for the feedback. Karen gave a tight nod, wrote something on her clipboard, and turned without another word. Danielle watched her, go heart-pounding. Not with fear, no, with that warm, buzzing fury that only shows up when someone underestimates you. She'd seen women like Karen before, the kind who hide sharp claws behind peach-colored cardigans and think a clipboard gives them power. Karen had no idea, because Danielle wasn't just a new homeowner. She was a lawyer, a very good one who knew how to read between the lines, collect receipts, and play the long game. She didn't shout, she didn't threaten, she documented, and if Karen wanted a fight, well, she'd just knocked on the wrong damn door. Danielle didn't even flinch when the third fine showed up. It was tucked inside the same kind of smug envelope as the first two, slipped halfway into her mailbox, like it didn't have the courage to enter all the way. This time, the violation was for inappropriate vehicle sound levels. Translation: her Tesla made too much noise backing out of the driveway. Let that sink in. A Tesla. The car that purrs like a sleepy cat. Apparently, the neighborhood's idea of a quiet community meant Danielle needed to float out of her garage like a ghost. She stood on the porch in her hoodie, sipping lukewarm coffee and reading the fine with a straight face. Then she gave a single, exaggerated nod, like a sitcom character about to wreck someone's entire storyline. Okay, she said to the air. We're really doing this. To be clear, Danielle hadn't moved to Oak Meadow Bluffs looking for a fight. She'd been looking for peace. A big yard, a home office with good lighting, maybe even a Saturday where she didn't have to hear sirens after spending years in courtrooms arguing against police overreach, housing discrimination, and wrongful terminations. She thought this chapter of her life might actually be ... soft ... instead. It felt like she'd walked onto the set of a low-budget reality show called Karen vs. the World. And guess who just became the main character? The first week had already been a circus. Side eyes from dog walkers, awkward silences from stroller moms, a literal drive-by from a neighbor who slowed his SUV just enough to glare, then sped off like he had somewhere important to be. No one said anything outright. That was the game. It was all nods and just a heads up. Notes, and conveniently missing welcome baskets. And then there was the HOA letter. No scratch that. The letter. It came on her second day, unsigned, but crisp and perfectly aligned, like someone had printed it from a template labeled passive-aggressive _ 101.x. It said things like, "We take pride in our aesthetic values and uniformity ensures property value." You know, the kind of language that makes you feel like you just got scolded by a talking salad fork. It mentioned trash bins, porch flags, and decorative messaging, which, Danielle realized, was probably code for the small wooden sign near her door that read "Black Girl Magic lives here." She'd bought it at a street fair in D.C. 2 years ago. It had followed her through 3 apartments and 1 sketchy condo. That sign meant something. She wasn't taking it down. She'd left a voicemail with the HOA that day, asking who had sent the letter. No response, not even a courtesy text. Just radio silence. And then days later, the first official fine, then another, then the Tesla nonsense. That's when Danielle decided she wasn't going to just roll her eyes and wait for things to settle. She'd pulled out a leather-bound notebook she kept in her work bag, originally reserved for courtroom notes and case strategies, and started writing. Date, time, violation, context. Her lawyer brain clicked on like muscle memory. She wasn't collecting mail anymore. She was collecting evidence. Because here's the thing, Danielle knew the law. Not like people who watch a lot of Law and Order know it. No, she knew the loopholes, the traps, the clauses buried in page 32 of a 35-page HOA agreement. She had spent years representing people who didn't have the time or energy to push back, but she had the time. And after everything she'd seen, families pushed out of their homes, leases broken for ridiculous reasons, one client who got cited for having too many potted plants, she had absolutely no patience left for this kind of suburban nonsense. That Saturday, as the neighborhood prepared for its weekly porch socials, which she had not been invited to, Danielle sat at her kitchen island with a laptop, scanning the state's Homeowner Association transparency laws. Oh look, HOAs were required to keep public records of fines, board meetings, and community votes. Interesting, and right there in the fine print. Any resident had the legal right to request those records in writing. She drafted a formal request before the coffee finished brewing. Not a rant, not a threat, just a clean, bulletproof letter signed with her full name and credentials, Danielle Carter, ESQ. By noon, she'd printed 3 copies. One went in the HOA's Dropbox. One went by certified mail. The third she kept for her growing file. She even took a selfie with the letter, holding it like a golden ticket, just in case someone claimed later she hadn't submitted it. Because Danielle knew how these stories went. She'd seen this pattern 1,000 times in court-powered trips dressed as procedure, rules bent just enough to target the wrong kind of neighbor. She was used to the microaggressions wrapped in fake politeness, the concerns raised with a smile, the "it's not about race" disclaimers that always came 5 minutes before the lawsuits. But this time, it wasn't one of her clients being railroaded. It was her, and unlike Karen or whoever was behind this crusade, Danielle had a law degree, a steady nerve, and zero interest in playing nice. She looked around her living room, still half full of boxers. The curtains weren't up. The books weren't on the shelves. It didn't even smell like home yet. But she knew one thing. This house wasn't temporary, and neither was she. It started with the drapes. Not that Danielle was especially attached. To them, they were placeholders. Cheap linen bedsheets she'd pinned up until her actual window treatments arrived, but, apparently, they'd stirred up quite the storm among the HOA elites. Specifically, a storm named Karen Whitmore. Danielle met her on a Thursday. Karen didn't show up with brownies or a fruit basket. She showed up with a clipboard and a purse full of judgment. Tall, tight smile, frosted blonde bob that didn't dare move with the wind, and an aura of authority no one had actually asked for. She rang the bell like it owed her money. Danielle opened the door in sweatpants and a hoodie that said, "Trust Black Women." She hadn't had coffee yet. Her smile was on strike. "Hi there," chirped Karen. Karen Whitmore. "I'm president of the Oak Meadow Bluffs HOA. Just wanted to stop by and say welcome to the neighborhood." Danielle blinked. "Thanks." Karen's eyes slid past her, into the house, lingering on the half-unpacked boxes and the dog-eared legal books on the entryway table. Then she turned back, smile still on like it was glued in place. "I wanted to flag a few things real quick. Just to help you get settled. We have some community standard sits, all in the handbook, but I know it can be a lot to digest." Danielle raised an eyebrow. "I read it." "Oh, great. Then you probably noticed the section about window coverings. We do ask that they be neutral in tone. Those sheets, while creative, aren't quite within the approved palette. They're temporary," Danielle said. "My real curtains come Saturday." Karen chuckled. "The way people do when they don't believe you, but want to keep the vibe friendly." "Well, Just make sure they're within regulation. Also, we noticed some, non-standard porch signage. That cute little wooden thing by your door. Danielle didn't flinch. You mean the one that says Black Girl Magic lives here? Yes, exactly. It's just a bit bold. We typically prefer messages that are more universally welcoming. Danielle took a slow breath. You mean less black? Karen blinked hard, like the sun had just slapped her. Oh no, not at all. It's not about that. It's about cohesion. We just want everyone to feel comfortable. Danielle stared. I am everyone, and I am comfortable. Karen opened her mouth, closed it, wrote something on her clipboard, and backed down the steps like she was escaping a gas leak. Danielle watched her walk away and whispered, That's gonna be a problem. By that evening, she had another fine. This one was for excessive driveway clutter, which translated to the moving boxes she'd stacked near the garage, waiting for recycling pickup. The fine was $75. She didn't call. She didn't yell. She documented. Scanned it into her HOA folder. Time-stamped it. Photographed the driveway from 3 angles. Then she pulled out a yellow legal pad and began sketching out a flowchart labeled Karen's House of Petty Nonsense. By Monday, Danielle had compiled a running list of all the violations she'd received since moving in. Trash bin visibility, untrue. Noise complaints laughable. Porch decor, obviously targeted. And now, apparently, garage clutter. Funny how none of the other neighbors seemed to be getting similar letters. Even though she'd seen one house with a 15-foot inflatable flamingo still waving in the wind from the 4th of July. The problem wasn't policy. The problem was Karen, and Karen, unfortunately for her, was about to find out what happened when she played HOA dictator with the wrong homeowner. Danielle sent a formal letter stationery, signed in ink requesting full access to HOA meeting minutes, board communications, and the records of all homeowner violations for the past 6 months. Under state law, HOA members had the right to see those records. Danielle knew that because she'd written briefs on it. 3 days passed. No reply, so she followed up with a copy sent by certified mail, then another copy sent via email. Still no answer. Karen, it seemed, had decided to play chicken, which was fine. Danielle had driven through much worse. She wasn't new to this. She once sued an HOA in Maryland that fined a family for building a wheelchair ramp for their son. Another in Georgia that targeted Muslim homeowners for displaying prayer flags. She'd won those cases and others like them because people, like Karen, always believed the same 2 things. They were above the law, and no one would ever call them on it. But Danielle didn't flinch. She prepped. She filed a preliminary complaint with the county's Housing Compliance Division and included copies of every fine, every letter, and a detailed log of Karen's doorstep comments. Then she reached out to a local reporter she knew from her last civil rights case, someone who loved HOA drama, especially when it smelled like discrimination in a pantsuit. 2 days later, she got a call from a soft-voiced board member named Harold. He wanted to talk things through before things got blown out of proportion. Danielle agreed to meet over Zoom. Recorded. Harold tried the classic spin. We just want to keep the neighborhood pleasant. Some residents are sensitive to changes, and surely we can come to an understanding. Danielle listened patiently, then hit him with the list of fines, a screenshot of the state statute, and a short legal explanation of selective enforcement. Harold paled. She could hear it in the silence. We'll review the complaints internally, he muttered. Take your time, she said. Just don't take too long. The next day, the fines were paused pending investigation. But Danielle knew that was just Karen stalling, hoping she'd lose steam or move on. She did instead. She printed a new sign for her porch. Bigger this time. Same font. New words. This home protected by lawyer energy. That weekend, she saw Karen at the community mailbox, clipboard in hand, shades on, pretending to scroll her phone. Danielle gave her the friendliest smile she could manage. "Good morning, Karen. Beautiful day for transparency, don't you think?" Karen didn't reply, but her hand tightened on the clipboard. Danielle walked away without looking back. The storm was coming, and Karen had no idea she was already drowning. Karen Whitmore was many things: persistent, petty, power-hungry, but subtle was not one of them. By the second week of Danielle's formal complaint, Karen had shifted from sneaky violations to full-blown intimidation. A drone flew over Danielle's backyard 3 times in one day, the same nondescript gray one, buzzing like a mechanical mosquito right when she was trying to enjoy her coffee. She spotted it while she was FaceTiming her sister and didn't even flinch. "What's that?" "Karen's budget surveillance," her sister joked, squinting at the screen. "Tell her to stop stalking your patio. It's weird." Danielle didn't have to tell her. She simply waved at the drone like a queen greeting peasants from a balcony. "Let Karen stew on that." The HOA board finally responded, 6 days late, with a carefully worded email full of legal-sounding phrases that meant absolutely nothing. "We appreciate your concerns. We are reviewing our procedures. Please allow us time to address your request." Translation: "We're scrambling because you caught us slippin'." Meanwhile, Danielle's inbox was filling with screenshots, tips, and complaints from other neighbors, quiet ones who hadn't dared speak out before, but were suddenly a little braver now that someone was pushing back. A Latina mom down the block had been fined twice for unapproved plant varieties because she dared to grow tomatoes in a raised bed. Single dad had been warned about improper window decorations after his kids taped up handmade drawings of cartoon characters for Christmas. And then there was the elderly couple who'd been cited for excessive porch sitting. Yes, porch sitting. As if enjoying your rocking chair was somehow a criminal act in Karen's little suburban fiefdom. Danielle listened, took notes, and realized something bigger was happening. This wasn't just about her sign or her curtains. This was a pattern, a system, a quiet little machine that cranked out fear disguised as community, order, and Karen was the one pulling the levers. So Danielle did what any good lawyer with receipts and rage would do. She filed a lawsuit. It wasn't just a discrimination claim. It was civil harassment, selective enforcement, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The whole 9 yards. She didn't want money. She wanted accountability. She wanted the HOA board to explain why every single violation had one thing in common. The homeowner wasn't white. When the papers were served, Karen tried to pretend it was a mistake. "This is outrageous," she told a local reporter. "This is about property values, not race." Danielle didn't bother clapping back in the press yet. She knew the courtroom would speak louder, and it did. The hearing date arrived faster than Karen expected. That morning, Danielle walked into the county courthouse in a charcoal suit and red heels sharp enough to cut glass. She carried one slim leather binder and a thumb drive. No fluff, just facts. Karen showed up 30 minutes late in a peach blazer and too much perfume. She tried to bring the board with her for backup, but most of them had suddenly developed scheduling conflicts. The courtroom was quiet, clean, and heavy with tension. A few journalists filled the back row, scribbling in notebooks. Someone was already whispering about the drone. Danielle began with her statement.com, precise, unapologetic. She laid out every violation, every fine, every unanswered request. She showed the footage of the drone. She showed email chains, meeting minutes that had been altered post-fact, and photographs that proved Karen's rules only applied to certain homes. Then came the kicker. Danielle pulled up a PowerPoint. Yes, a PowerPoint. Because she believed in receipts and visual impact, and displayed a bar graph labeled HOA violations by race of homeowner. It wasn't subtle, and it wasn't pretty. Karen shifted in her seat. The judge didn't blink when it was Karen's turn. She fumbled through a paper folder, like a student who forgot their homework. She claimed Danielle was trying to weaponize identity, that everyone had been fined, and that some people just don't understand community standards. The judge raised an eyebrow. Are you suggesting the plaintiff misunderstood the law while being a licensed attorney? Karen froze. Danielle didn't smile, but her eyebrows did a tiny victory dance. The ruling didn't take long. The judge called the HOA's behavior irregular, selective, and deeply concerning. Danielle was awarded damages, not that she wanted them, but more importantly, the judge ordered a full audit of the HOA's past 3 years of activity. Karen was removed as HOA president, effective immediately. Word spread like wildfire. By sunset, the group chat of Oak Meadow Bluffs was on fire. Neighbors who hadn't spoken in months were suddenly organizing their own meetings, demanding transparency, electing new board members. The very next week, a fresh letter landed in Danielle's mailbox. This one wasn't hostile. It was a formal invitation. Would she consider serving on the newly restructured HOA board? Danielle read it twice, then laughed out loud. Later that month, she stood on her own front porch, giving a short speech to 30 neighbors seated in folding chairs on her lawn. Someone brought lemonade. Someone else brought empanadas. A few kids chased each other through the sprinklers. The vibe had shifted. Danielle looked around and took a slow breath. This was what it was supposed to feel like. I didn't move here to make a statement, she said. I moved here to live. But when someone tries to make you feel like you don't belong because of your name, your color, or your curtains, you don't stay quiet. You remind them you do belong, and you're not going anywhere. Applause broke out, loud, real, and, a few weeks after that, a video clip from that little speech, posted by a neighbor, started making the rounds online. It got shared, then reshared. A few million views later, Danielle found herself being invited to speak at a TEDx event about bias in housing associations. She wore the same red heels, told the same story. By the time she stepped off the stage, half the room was on its feet, and Karen, last anyone checked. She'd moved to a different community, one without an HOA, or maybe one where no one had yet figured out who she really was. Danielle didn't care. She had a house, a porch, a neighborhood that finally waved back. And now she had the last word. Never underestimate a black woman with a law degree and a long memory.